All right, so our lower body at-home workout. We're going to start off with a rear foot elevated split squat. In doing so in a 1 1/4 rep fashion, so you'll see I'll go all the way down, up 1/4 of the way, back down, and then all the way up, and that's 1 rep. Keeping my front foot's heel down. If you want to make this more of a glute dominant or hip dominant movement, lean more at the torso. If you want to make it more of a quad emphasized movement or biased movement, just sit a little more upright and let your knee travel forward. We're going to follow that up with a couch stretch. So get in this position. You can use a towel, you can use any type of pad, just save your knees. But you can see foot up against the wall, bracing my abdominal wall, contracting my glute to get a stretch anywhere from the top of my thigh all the way down. If that's too much, you can start on the ground. Foot on the ground, I mean, brace your abdominal wall still, contract that glute, and then if you need to get a little more stretch, move yourself forward. Moving into our posterior series, starting with a single-leg glute bridge. Just making sure, again, a braced abdominal wall, driving that heel through the ground, and getting a little bit of posterior pelvic tilt at the top to really contract the glute. Obviously, you're going to do both sides. Our next movement is a single leg dumbbell RDL. Notice that I'm not reaching towards the ground with the dumbbell. I'm just letting my arm hang, and I'm only hinging over as much as I can actively do to stretch my ground-based legs, hamstring, and you might feel this in your glute a little bit too. But again, big thing is you're not reaching down with the dumbbell, you're just hinging at your hip. After the single leg RDL, we move into a sliding leg curl. Now you can use sliders like this. Many people won't have these, but you can either use a towel on a slippery surface, socks on a slippery surface, or if on a carpet, you can actually use paper plates. So start from this progression where you can see I'm going from a bridged position, braced abdominal wall, glutes are contracted, keeping my hips off the ground. And I'm actually going to go to, in a second here, a regressed version, if you can't do this, whereby going through the full eccentric, dropping your hips to the ground, and then getting back to the bridged portion right after that. You can even do as a mechanical drop set, or just start with either or in terms of the variations. From there, we actually finish off the series with a standing pike stretch. Now you're going to see it's just basically pretty much locked at the legs, moving your hips back in active range of motion, not, as you'll see, reaching over like this, but actually just pushing your hips back to feel a good stretch in that hamstring and glute area. Our next series is the squat or quad dominant series, starting with a dumbbell wall hack squat. You can see using a foam roller, just starting in this position. Good upright torso, keeping feet fully on the ground, heels on the ground, letting the knees travel forward and having an upright position. I'm going through a 3/4 rep to keep constant tension on my quads. If you can and want to get even more quads, bring your feet a little bit closer to the wall. And as long as you can keep your heels on, that extra knee travel will just make it more of a quad dominant movement. But try to make these repetitions nice and smooth, trying to keep tension and intention in the quadriceps, driving your knees back to come up and slowly pushing your knee forward to come down. Next in this series is a dumbbell heels elevated squat. I'm going to start here actually in the front rack position, and I'm going to come all the way down. Knees will travel forward, up, torso is a little more upright, and then we'll drive up. And trying to keep constant tension again, very similar to what we did with the hack squat position, or the hack squat movement, I should say. And I'm actually going to show, if you can't do the front rack position like I'm doing, a goblet squat position, which is basically just one dumbbell holding in front of you. From here, we're going to move to right away, heels off, almost like a mechanical drop set, to the ground, keeping that same position, whether it's the front rack or the goblet squat, going through an AMRAP here of just getting as many reps as you can before we move on to the next movement, which is a kneeling sissy squat. And again, here I'm going to go through progression into regression, starting with the hardest position, braced abdominal wall, glutes are short and contracted, and just slowly lowering yourself into position And this is going to be difficult for many people. This is a hard exercise anyways, not to mention after you've already done all of the movements that preceded it. But a really good movement to get into the lengthened position of the quadriceps. And here you can see I bring myself up to a dorsiflex position. That's just going to be easier on the ankles, as well as alter my range of motion to make it a little bit shorter. And finally, the last regression is getting that same position plus using an anchored band. You can use a railing or whatever you would like to anchor the band off of, but just helping accommodate the resistance on the way down and help you back up. From there, we move into our final series, which is just a dumbbell walking lunge. Now, I'll go through a couple different variations here. It's just a normal dumbbell walking lunge. When I turn around here, I'm actually going to do a more hip or glute dominant lunge, whereby I step a little bit longer, and then just bend over a bit more at the torso, which is going to make it bias the hips and be a little bit more glute dominant. And then when I make my way back, I abbreviate the range of motion a bit, keep the heel down but let the knee travel a little bit further forward and stay upright. And this is if you want to make it more of a quadriceps based exercise. And then we finally finish off our lower body day with a kneeling hip flexor to reach stretch. So brace the abdominal wall, you've been hearing that a lot. Contract the glute, come forward, just to feel a stretch in the front of the hip flexor area, anywhere down the thigh. Doing that for time. And then going into a reach of your elbow to opposite foot. Now it's going to be difficult for a lot of people, but you're going to have a stretch anywhere on that posterior line, possibly in the hamstring, the glute of the front leg, even up into your lat.